I'm McKinney Smith. In 2009, while going through a divorce, I decided to jump straight into entrepreneurship. In 2012, I lost my sister and asked myself, what legacy do I want to leave behind? Since then, I've become a serial entrepreneur, helping other women publish their books, produce their podcasts, and reach their big goals to walk in their greatness. I realized the importance of sharing our stories of resilience and how it can be another's guide to walk in a manner worthy of their calling. We are blessed to be a blessing, so get ready to be blessed with an inspiring testimony. Hey, Legacy Leavers. Thank you for joining us in the Walk in My Stilettos podcast, the top 1.5% most popular show in the world where we have conversations with amazing women that are letting us step into their shoes. I help women to own their voice so they can create impact, prosperity, and legacy. I get inspired when I see another woman succeeding, but what interests me more is her backstory and her mindset on how she got there. So today's guest is about to bless us with her testimony. And since you're already here, you may as well subscribe. Today we have Tori Geiger. She's an entrepreneur and a congenital heart defect survivor. She's gone under multiple open heart surgeries and procedures throughout her life, sharing her story of resilience and lessons for living victoriously. Tori is a bestselling author of the book From Vulnerable to Victorious, Turning Your Chronic Illness into Your Victory Story. With a heart for others affected by chronic illness, such as CHD, Tori started a lifestyle blog where she shares lifestyle and chronic illness tips. And part of her mission is having a heart that beats for others and to help other chronic illness warriors achieve a life of fulfillment and impact. My kind of girl. Please welcome to the show, Tori.
Hello. It's so great to be here. I just love legacy leavers. Yes, that's what we are here to do. So I just love that.
Thank you. Thank you. I love interviewing women like yourself that our mission and our passion align. So anytime I hear a woman who is making an impact and serving using her story, I'm all about it. So thank you for saying yes and agreeing to come on and share your journey with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Okay, before we get to where you are presently, I love to, start at the very beginning. Because as kids, we have these vivid imaginations. And before society starts to limit us and try to, shape who we become, we have these fantasies of what we want to be or who we want to be. So I would love to know, what did Tori want to be when she was a little girl?
Yes, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a doctor. I specifically wanted to either be a radiologist or a cardiologist. And I think I just had some seed within me that knew my heart's story was meant to be used in some capacity. And I thought that was in the medical field. That did not happen, especially after some traumatic events in the ER. I don't like needles anymore. I hate IVs. So doctor route was not the route for me. But that was originally when I was little. I'd go to the library and read books on radiology and weird things like that. I think I was in third grade. I guess I was just determined at that age, but that was who Tori wanted to be growing up.
Wow. I mean, I read that you were given a slim chance of survival due to your heart defect at birth. And here you are,
yes,
making such a great impact, a blessing to everyone who comes in contact with you. How does that make you feel?
It's honestly, like you said, it's a blessing. I think I've learned that my story is a blessing and that we're given those things that we've walked through to be able to do that for others. I think it lights my fire every single day. That's why I get up in the morning, is to be able to have conversations with women that are affected by chronic illness, CHD, and just say, you got it, girl. You don't know even how much you are learning right now. And use that for so many things in your life that, number one, can help you reach dreams that you have on your heart, but two, you can help others in the process, which is the most rewarding experience.
When you talk, I get, how do I say this? I'm an empath. So sometimes when people are talking to me and I'm really feeling what they're saying, either I get emotional, I get goosebumps, I get all these things. So I'm feeling it right now. I'm feeling it. What gets me is I literally have a daughter your age. And I
Yeah.
know that, your heart story has given you the strength to truly go after your dreams and to live this victorious life. So I want to know, how did you learn at such a young age the importance of sharing your story?
I think it happened because in high school, I had a very traumatic experience that forced me to have to open up and share with people. To give you a little bit of a glimpse, I was a avid athlete, and in high school, I was ambulanced from a high school basketball game and defibrillated 3 times in the ER to avoid sudden cardiac arrest. And I was basically wheeled out on a stretcher in front of most of the student body as a 14-year-old in freshman year of
Wow.
high school. And most people up until that point didn't know my story. And so that forced me to have to say, yes, like this is something I've been living with that you can't see the scars, but it's something I'm living with. And that was a moment that I actually was able to tell people, yeah, it's what makes me kind of me. And
Mhm.
people were like, wow, that blesses me. Like you give me hope. And I think that was my first taste of, oh, the things that I walked through, this pain that was awful, that scary traumatic event, almost facing death, was an opportunity now to be able to speak into people's lives and help them. And I
Mhm.
think that was the start of it.
Wow. You just said you had to be defibrillated 3 times. So
Yes.
your life is literally a blessing. Like how does that even change your view of life?
It gives you a sense of urgency to really live with purpose. I think I learned a lot of lessons about what urgency really is. Urgency doesn't come out of fear. Don't live your life because you're fearful and you're trying to get to the next thing. Live it out of purpose. So have that urgency every single day because you're trying to live your life with purpose. I think I was faced with that question really early on of like, what legacy do I want to leave on the earth? Because
Mm,
when you're laying in an ER hospital bed and you're thinking this is the end, those thoughts of did I make a mark? How will people remember me were things I was thinking about as a 14-year-old.
wow.
And so that just I think gave me more of like a fervency to just keep going after things after that event.
Wow. Like for you to have to deal with that at such a young age, like I know myself included, but all the women that I've interviewed on the show or even conversations that I've just had with women in my network, whenever someone has either had a near death experience or lost someone that is super, super close to them, it shifts their perspective on life.
Oh yeah.
It gives you more of a sense of urgency, more of a sense of living with purpose. And you had to discover that at such a young age for you to like, I think my aha moment of thinking about my legacy was in 2012 when my sister passed. And that was the first time I
Yeah.
had asked myself that question. Mind you, I was in my 30s. So to be at that point thinking, what do I want my legacy to be? But you got a head start, girl.
Yeah. I mean, I don't wish that upon anybody to have to go through that, but I think it was a blessing in disguise. I think it literally gave my life purpose. I think up until that point in my life, I was born with this congenital heart defect. I had open heart surgeries when I was a baby, and that was kind of my parents' story growing up kind of thing of what they had to deal with when I was a baby. But it really became like my own story when I had
Mhm.
to go through it in high school. And I think up until that point, I just pretended to be normal and
Mhm.
like, because no one could tell. And then it hit me in the face kind of like, no, you're not normal. But that's what makes you unique and gives you the ability to do what you're doing.
Right. You spoke about, I guess, the time when you were 14 and everyone found out in that moment what, you had been experiencing and, they didn't know any difference until that point. I realize again with other women that I've had these conversations with, also including myself, because I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder back in
Uh,
2006. But it's like people have no idea what you're actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis because it's not
yeah,
a quote unquote visible disability. Um,
exactly.
how do you think that's, I guess, allowed you to live differently from anyone else? I guess
Yeah.
people who don't have chronic illness.
I think I in a way think of it as like my superpower because it's what has made me me, like the resiliency I have. I know as a business owner, I am so much more creative because I have to be.
Yeah.
Like I have to be resourceful. And I think it helps me serve clients better. It helps me just serve better. And people ask me like, what has made you like a successful business owner or different things like that. And I'm just like, honestly, like it's what I've gone through with my CHD that truly has shaped me to give me skills. Like I have so much more empathy for
Mhm.
people going through things. And so for me, I'm an accounting nerd, finance nerd. So I have a couple companies I run, but my first business I had and still have is a bookkeeping and small business consulting company. And people are like, how does that relate to like accounting? And I'm like, well, I'm working with people that are twice my age on their accounting and on their things because they trust me. And there's that people skill of working with different personalities that comes from having to live with CHD and work with different personalities of nurses, doctors, and be resourceful.
Wow. I mean, you just spoke to your superpower, which, was something I love to ask the women that come on the show about, what do you feel that your superpower is? But you just really gave us that answer. Like, the listeners can't see my background, but that's literally what I have on my wall right there. Resilience is my superpower.
Yeah, seriously.
Usually when someone has been through some life-changing experiences or through any forms of major adversity or struggle, you hit the nail on the head where you said, it forces you to have more empathy for people. Sometimes people don't realize in their own situations how, I'm going to say, one-track mind or narrow-minded, but they're not looking at the perspective of the other person, right?
Yeah.
On top of that blessing of being able to have empathy for the people that you're working with, do you feel that there's any other positive character traits or abilities that dealing with chronic illness has given you?
I think for me, I've been able to pull things out of people. Like my love language is like gifts of affirmation. And I feel like when I connect with people and I like see and they might tell me something about themselves, I'm like, I see this in you. Or like I
Mhm.
see that. And I think that comes from having to also do a lot of get to know yourself when you have a chronic illness, because I'm asked by a lot of people, like, how do you bounce back? And I'm like, well, I know who I am.
Yeah.
Like, and my chronic illness doesn't define me or what I'm capable of, and I know who I am at my core.
Mhm.
And so that allows me to bounce back when something happens. I have an ER visit, I have a new diagnosis. Like it helps me just do that. And that's what I'm just, when you get to know yourself so well,
Mhm.
then you're able to then help other people, like pull things out of them that you
Yes.
see.
Yes, absolutely. Mastering yourself first. I think a lot of people are so busy focusing on other people and, their faults and their journeys and not looking at
Yes.
themselves. But the more that you're able to understand you, the better it helps you to
Yes.
understand other people.
Totally. And I think in high school, I was forced to have to get to know myself because I was just thinking and going through all these emotions. And I'm going, what? What's happening? Like, and just experiencing fear and anger at just different levels when you're a 14-year-old. It's not, the normal, maybe like angsty teen. It's like you're actually like you face death as a 14-year-old. Like, that's a
Mhm.
different thing. I think it makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you married your college sweetheart, correct?
Yes, I did. Yes.
So anytime we have, love stories, I'm a lover of love. I always like to touch on that because we can't forget our support systems, right?
Yes.
So for those who are listening, like how has he been able to handle your journey?
I think for him, he didn't know at first that I had a heart condition when we first started dating. And then, I walked him through like, okay, this is kind of the reality of living and being married to somebody if we take this to the next level. And he was like, heck yeah, like this is what makes you you. And I think it's something he celebrates about me,
Mhm.
which is so empowering because, like I said, it makes me me, and he recognizes that. But his support is amazing. He checks in with me with different things. Like I'll have times that I'm experiencing different symptoms, but he also is a good chunk of hands off because I'm very self self-reliant. I'm very independent. Don't baby
Independent
me,
woman.
kind of. Yes. And so he does a very good job of giving me that space, but still making sure that I'm not overdoing different things, because I'm a Enneagram 3, an achiever. And
Mhm.
so I like to just go after things, and he'll be like, okay, like, don't overdo it.
Right.
So he's great in that role.
Love it. Love it. What advice would you give to a woman that is listening right now that I'm thinking of some of the questions that come into my DMs. You know, there's women who have chronic illness or chronic disorders, and they have, I'm going to say, trouble staying in relationships. So is there any advice that you would give to a woman that is listening to be able to build that connection with their partner, and for their partner to be able to understand what you're dealing with or what you're going through?
Yeah, I think one, it's knowing yourself extremely well, so you know how you react and your needs. I think it's I don't want to say a mistake, that might not be the right word, but it's not good to jump into a relationship without knowing yourself very well, especially when you have a chronic illness. I think that's my number one advice. I think two, the type of people that you're looking for, I think it comes down to values. Do you have shared values with them?
Mhm.
If not, walk away. You can't force them to have your values. And I think the other thing is, that person that you find needs to celebrate that about you. It's not something, you shouldn't ever feel like you're a burden to them. If it's something that they celebrate about you, that's the right type of person that you're
Mhm.
with. But I mean, I think Devin and I started talking about values and about kind of vision for our lives pretty early on in our relationship. And that made me know that he was serious. And two, it introduced me being able to talk about my heart condition and say, well, this is my vision of what I've seen for
Mhm.
my future because of what I've gone through. And so I think when you're able to do that and set that vision, you know you're on the right path with someone. If you can't do that with someone, I'd walk away.
Mhm. For someone like yourself, who you said, you know, you're a go-getter, you're a high achiever, how do you stay motivated? Like, what do you do on a regular basis that keeps you motivated? Because I know also when you're dealing with any form of chronic illness or disorders or anything like that, you know, you have your days where you don't have the energy, you don't feel like it. Like, what does Tori do?
Yes. As cliche as it sounds, I have a really great morning routine. It helps me. It's full of meditation, it's full of reading. It's just infusing myself with the person that I want to be,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. And
Totally.
I do it every single morning. Not every morning looks the same. I don't hold myself to the pressure of like every single like thing has to be the same, but it's just taking that time, whether it's 20 minutes, whether it's an hour in the morning, whatever I have, to at least pour something into my cup before I start the day. I think that's the number one important thing that
Right.
helps me stay motivated. If I stop doing that, I'm pouring out of an empty cup. So
Mhm.
it
Absolutely.
doesn't work. And
Absolutely.
so
And
that's what I do.
having a morning routine is so important because that's probably the only part of our day where we can actually control. You know, when the day gets
Yes.
going and things happen, and you know, you got to adjust and pivot as the day goes through. But having that morning routine, having some consistency, being able to you know, have those healthy habits in place, I think are definitely important.
I think it also helps when I'm having a time of overwhelm or something's happened. I have these different kind of practices to fall back on so I can kind of reset myself. So if I'm just having a day where I'm just completely exhausted and I'm overdoing it and I'm overwhelmed, I can take a step back. I can go and just take a second to read, kind of just drop myself down a little bit
Mhm.
from that level 10. And it helps me just kind of recenter, regroup, and move forward.
Mm. So what keeps you up at night? Like, you know, sometimes we
Yes.
we look at all the things that excite us and keep us motivated, but then, you know, sometimes we're laying there in bed at night and our mind is, you know, wandering about all the things that we have no control over or that we want to do. Like, what keeps you up at night?
I would say I have the entrepreneur mind. So I would say it's new ideas popping into my head at random times at night, and I just want to act on all of them. I would say it's also that never ending to do list. I think that's the other side of when you have that purpose and you're driven and you're
Mhm.
excited. There's this never ending to do list of I can always be doing more too. So I think it never ends. And so I think I've had to really work on reframing how I see my to-do list and how I take it as a win or a success each day is not necessarily what I accomplished on my to-do list. It's more, did I have impact that day? Was I intentional that day? Did I grow today versus did I mark everything off on my to-do list? Otherwise, I'm sitting at bed at night just going, oh my gosh. uh, and my husband is one of those people that can just conk out so fast, and I'll just lie awake just replaying the day of I should have, done this at this time versus this time. So if that answers your question, that's what keeps me up at night.
Completely. Okay, so when the pandemic hit, a lot of entrepreneurs had to either pivot or adjust. Some entrepreneurs were able to thrive. Others, had to close their business down. How has the pandemic affected how you serve and make an impact?
Honestly, we grew the most during the pandemic just because, especially in the financial kind of industry, at least that one company, and then also doing my blog, people were just craving help from other people. And in the financial business that I have, people were asking for help. And if you could problem solve and help kind of handhold a little bit and serve in that capacity, that helped us just grow, and we grew by referral. We tripled in size this last couple of years because of that. And then on the blog side, I think people were just hungry for connection, and it was great. It's been able to help me just connect with so many more people that I think are on social media now because of the pandemic. While I don't like the pandemic whatsoever, I wish it would go away. It has brought blessings for sure.
Absolutely. There's good in all things and there's bad in all things, right?
Yes, exactly.
So with dealing with being a wife and an entrepreneur and having a chronic illness, how do you take care of you? What does Tori's self-care routine look like?
Yes, it's working out. I love a good workout. I'm a runner. I was a track athlete. I was not a runner in track. I was a jumper, but I've gotten into running lately. Doing that, spending time with friends. I am an introvert, so I technically refuel by myself. So I do need alone time. I like reading. I read a lot of books and I journal a lot. Love writing. Those are things I just do in my alone time that recharge me, and getting outdoors. I would say those are my main things that if I'm having a heavy week, you can probably bet that my weekend's going to be filled with most of those types of activities.
Love it. I love hearing a good, healthy self-care routine. I'm all about that.
It's needed. That's it seems so simple but to have a self-care routine, but it's not as simple always to get it done.
Agreed. Absolutely. So before we go to the final segment of the show, I want you to tell people where they can stay connected with you online and learn more from you and about you.
Yes, come chat with me on Instagram. You can find me at Tori Joy Geiger, or you can come over to my website at torijoygeiger.com and connect with my blog there. There's lots of chronic illness resources all across there. And you can find my book on Amazon. Just type in From Vulnerable to Victorious, and you don't have to type in the subtitle all the time to pop it up, but that's a great way to get the book.
Awesome. So I'll definitely have the details to connect with you in the details section of the episode, and they won't have to search. They can just click and connect directly.
Perfect. Nice and easy.
Nice and easy. So the final segment of the show, I call it A Walk in Her Wisdom. And I want to say it's like a rapid fire, but it's really not rapid because I'm going to ask you to unpack if I really want to get into it.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
All right. Okay. What's the worst advice you've ever received?
I would say that you have to buy into hustle culture. I know that's not like the advice, but the people that buy into hustle culture saying you have to buy your time, or you have to prove yourself in that hustle culture mentality, where you're working 24/7. That's what success is. That success is time. I disagree. And I've learned that through my entrepreneurship journey, that that's not true. And you can have impact and a sustainable life without buying into hustle culture.
I agree 1000%. Here's I guess this is one of the questions that we're going to unpack, because I used to be one of those people that believed in work hard, play hard, that whole hustle culture.
Yes.
I've been an entrepreneur since maybe 2009. And I believe like the first maybe 10 years of that, I believed in the hustle culture. And then after dealing with severe health challenges and going through my healing journey, and I had the opportunity to slow down and to take better care of myself and to realize how the hustle was slowly killing me.
Yes.
Right. And I prioritized self-care, and I was still working continuously and being consistent. But that's when I actually started to multiply my income. That's when I actually started to have the energy to deal with clients. That's where I had the more creative ideas to come up, to be able to focus and to do things with purpose. So I no longer believe in the hustle culture. I am totally 1000% team self-care.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
1000%. I think starting off, I had clients telling me, oh yeah, you just gotta earn it. You gotta earn your stripes of, working until 2, 3 a.m. And that's the norm that you have to do for the next, 5, 10 years if you want to have a successful business. And I was like, well, I want to have a successful life, not just a successful business. And so I think if we can teach young women entrepreneurs not to buy into that, you can have a sustainable self-care, everything, and still reach your goals. I think that makes a difference in our world.
Absolutely. Like even what you just said about, not just having a successful business, but having a successful life, like having a life that you enjoy holistically. I think that's important. There's no such thing as absolute balance, but that's a healthier balance, balanced way to live. I was thinking of, there's certain practices and certain habits that, and I believe because of social media, some of those things become heightened. But if a certain thought leader believes a certain thing, then all of a sudden everyone believes that that's for them. And I truly believe that not everything is for everyone. Just like when the pandemic first hit and everyone's like, well, if you're not working, you're not doing anything. But I truly believe that the pandemic, when it first hit, whatever your body, spirit, mind, whatever needed at that time, if it was rest, it was time for you to rest. If it was time for you to hit the pavement running, then it's time for you to hit the pavement running. So when people say things like, you need to stay up until 2 a.m. as an entrepreneur, or you have to wake up at 5 a.m. as an entrepreneur, that doesn't work for everyone. And if you study a lot of billionaires and people who are successful as entrepreneurs, you may have the Robin Sharmas who believe in the 5 a.m. club, but then there's people like Jay-Z or whoever else that wakes up at like 8 o'clock in the morning. They're still billionaires.
Yeah. Exactly. It's which methodology you want to choose.
Exactly. What works best for you, right?
Yep. Exactly.
So what's the best advice you've ever received?
I would say the best advice that I've ever received is to write down what I'm going through. That was advice that was given from my grandma. She was a writer. And when I was going through those things in high school, she told me, write it down. She did not tell me why to write it down. I figured that out for myself. 1, it helped me so much just process things. And 2, it gave me the foundation to be able to share it with other people, which is just an incredible gift to be able to take what I've gone through and do that. I think everyone should journal. Personally, I think we should all take the time to write down what we're going through, write down stories of things we've gone through, the highs, the lows, because later on in life, even if you don't get a book published or you don't, have these enormous saving the world type dreams, your grandkids or kids someday can find that in those words, the things you've lived through. Your life is a legacy. And so you can do that through writing. So that's the best advice that's changed my world.
I love it. I love it. I truly agree with you on that. I'm a big fan of journaling. 1, because I believe sometimes we don't know how to communicate how we're feeling to other people, or we may have feelings that they're going to judge us or receive it wrong or what have you. But being able to write down how you feel, that's a safe space for you to say exactly what is going on inside of you. And you're able to detox, even if it's negative thoughts, to get them out so they're not, consuming you, right? It's a form of expressing that energy and that vibration. So I'm a huge believer in journaling. And to your point about, if your grandkids find it later, like that was one reason why I created my gratitude journal, because it's like compiling all of your greatest memories into a book that can be a keepsake down the line, right?
Yeah.
I've listened to a couple of different podcast episodes where it's like they found journals from people, back during other traumatic times, whether it be the Holocaust or through other things, where they found their journals and they were able to be inspired by what they wrote in their journals of how they were able to get through those hard times and learn from them, learn about not only that time, but that person's strength and resilience.
I think it also tells us so much about where we get our values from. My grandpa recently passed away in the last year.
Wow.
And when people were speaking, when people were speaking at his memorial, they were just sharing all these different stories, and he was a writer as well. But just it clicked in my mind of like, okay, I get where so much of my values and things came from, or that hard work or things that have been literally maybe passed down from generations through things that they've gone through, like being in the depression or different things like that. And so I think it helps us know a little bit too where we came from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's one of the biggest failures that you've had in the past year, and what did it teach you?
I would say my biggest failures is taking on too much and saying yes to too many people. I early on had really hard time setting boundaries with people, and it literally ran me over to the point where we had to downscale how many clients we had and different things like that, where I was at the point where my health was starting to get not great. And it was because I couldn't say no to people, and I wanted to people please, and I wanted to help them, and it came out of a place of goodness. But it was like slowly just, I hated our company. I hated what I was doing because I had overdone it. And so I think my failure was not saying no, and also not asking for help. I think I tried to just do it all myself. And rather than, I had all these employees or my husband, who also runs the business with me, to ask for help or advice on whether or not, I should, take on this client. So you got to set boundaries. Yeah. Otherwise you're going to get railroaded. That's what happened to me.
Some great points. Like, learning to say no. A lot of people as new entrepreneurs, they're afraid to say no. They feel like they have to say yes to everything in order to be successful. And that's not true. I'm a firm believer, especially now, in once you know your purpose and you know what aligns with your core values, you can say no to everything else, right? You talked about that, the having boundaries, because people will basically treat you how you teach them to treat you. And sometimes if they don't see a boundary there, they're pushing on that boundary. And the more they push, that makes you realize you're the reason I need this boundary.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, working with clients, I remember I got to a point, it was during the pandemic and we were growing so much. It was kind of probably the start of the pandemic. And I got a message from them like, oh, you're just like me. It was like midnight and I was working on stuff, emailing them and stuff. He was like, yeah, you never stop working. This is great. And I was like, oh no. And so it set that precedent with that client. And I've had to break it with that client and just set really firm boundaries, because they honestly thought that they could still message me or send me things and expect a reply at 12 a.m. or different things like that. And so I've gotten really good at really showing that boundary.
Good. I love that. Okay, so last but not least, what new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life in the last 5 years?
I would say the habit has honestly been a morning routine. I know that might sound cliche, but that has changed my life. I didn't really have much of a routine, maybe in college or different things, but once I was out of college and I started doing that, I was a better person. I think you are what you practice. And I think you can form those habits to help you become a better you. As cliche as that sounds, I want to constantly be striving to be better each day. And when I wasn't pouring in or having a morning habit or taking that time, I didn't like the person I became because stress and everything can tend to form you to have those bad habits that turn you into a person that you don't like very
Mm-hmm.
much and isn't the person that you're supposed to be. And so I think I've learned over the last year, probably, I would say probably last 3 years since starting our company, that taking intentional time to have that morning routine and have that time of brainstorming and creative thinking in my morning routine is what is going to help me keep moving forward. If I don't do it, I'm going to get stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. The results are in the routine.
Yes.
A lot of things may sound cliche, but it's true, right?
Yes.
People may brush things off as, yeah, that's just a quote or that's just something people say. But if you actually dig into some of those things and understand where they come from and how they actually affect you, you'll realize how true they really are. And
Yeah.
what we do, the actions that we take, that's where our results come from. So it's not what we read, it's not what we listen to, it's the action we take from that. And
Exactly.
the routine of those things, that's where your results are.
We can say what our values are all the time, but if our actions don't actually show it, it's not maybe really your value. And so I think that's how we make sure our values are aligning, is when we're taking that time to do that.
Absolutely. Tori, is there any question that you feel that I haven't asked, that maybe there's information that you want to share with the listeners, a message that you want to share with the listeners?
I would say my message I want people to know is just share your story. Whatever level, whatever your comfortability level is, share your story in some capacity, whether that's just even just writing, in a journal, and you're sharing it maybe with yourself, like you're not quite comfortable to go out and spread it with social media. That's awesome. I would say take the time to tell people what you've gone through. If you're at a level of vulnerability in different relationships, or you feel like you have that purpose, I think we've all been given a story. We've all been given a victory story. We can choose to find the different things in our lives that are blessings, whether they were hard times or not, and we can share those with others. So I would say live your life with that mentality of, how can I bless people with what I've gone through? And I think it will change how you live.
Absolutely. I love that. I told that, like, that's what I'm all about. I totally align with that 1000%. Like, everything is about owning your story, sharing your story, because your story may be about you, but it's not only for you. And it can save someone else. It can inspire someone else to do greater. It can be the blueprint for someone else to walk in their greatness. Sometimes people feel like their story isn't enough, or they don't have a big story. You don't need a big story. It's your truth. Whatever lessons that you're learning along the way, like whatever lessons you come out of the school of hard knocks with, that's the lessons part, the part of your life that you should be out there sharing and using to inspire others. So I just want to thank you so much, Tori, for sharing your story and your wisdom. Like, you're just a beautiful soul. I love your energy. Thank you so, so much for everything you do and the impact that you're making.
Thank you so much for having me. It's why I love your podcast and what you're doing. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so, so much. And to all of you legacy leavers out there, until next time, subscribe on all platforms. Don't forget to rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcast. And it's because of all of you who continue to listen each week why the show even ranks in the top 1.5% of most popular shows in the world. That's out of almost 2.8 million podcasts. So I just want to thank every single one of you. And I want to ask, if you've received value from today's show, or if you can think of someone that has a chronic illness that needs to hear Tori's story, that can gain value from her wisdom, please share it with them. Feel free to screenshot this week's episode, and you can tag us on Instagram. You can tag Tori at Tori Joy Geiger, and you can tag myself at The Real Mikini Smith, and continue to walk in greatness in your stilettos in a manner worthy of your calling.